Since 2003, this is the Sports Source, East Tennessee's #1 sports talk show.
Presented by Pipe Wrench, and by Junk Be Gone, and by the Garza Law Firm.
With your host, John Pennington. The Sports Source starts now.
Good Sunday morning and welcome into the Junk Be Gone studios for today's edition of the Sports Source. We appreciate you being with us. SEC Media Days is come and gone, which means football season is basically here. We'll wrap up everything that had to do with the Vols. We'll wrap up everything that had to do with just the SEC in general. How did that Media Days in Texas feel? Did it feel like an SEC event? What about Texas and Oklahoma? They feel like they're going to be a fit, that kind of stuff. We're also going to do a lot on recruiting today. We'll catch you up on all the stuff that's going and coming with Josh Heupel's recruiting class. But first, I want to say thanks right off the top. Just to, I often say thanks at the end of the show. I want to say it off the top today because I thought this was funny, and it's the power of you guys, just you guys. I've been in TV 30 years. I've never seen anything like the loyalty that you show to the sponsors on this show. A few weeks ago, after Tennessee won their national championship, I showed, at the very end of the show, we showed a panoramic shot and said you could go to Express Frame and grab this, and if you say X, you'll get a discount. I was in there this weekend, and I was hit with dirty looks because apparently so many of you went down there, you basically knocked the doors off the hinges. The one person was working that day, and apparently she was crushed, and my name is mud with her. But they had a huge bunch of these things. They had to reorder 3 different times because you kept going down there. That just doesn't exist. I've been in local TV. Your loyalty to this show is what makes this show possible. I say thank you. Let's get involved. Let's get into this show. First segment brought to you by one of our great sponsors, the folks at Junk Be Gone. Summer's here. There's no better time to clear the junk from your attic, your garage, your shed, your backyard, your front yard, your business. They come and they'll clear out a business too. If you've got an office, you got to get rid of the old desks, the old chairs. You don't have to do that yourself. Call Junk Be Gone. They'll send out one of their teams, and these are professional folks. They're great. They come right in, haul it off for you. It's perfect. JunkBeGone.biz will tell you everything you need to know about this family-owned, locally owned company. And I know there are a lot of imitators out there who've kind of seen this idea and tried to copy it. Let me tell you, I go with the original, and I'm happy I do. And I always have been. You should too. Junk Be Gone. All right. Let's welcome in the panelists for today. We have right there Chuck Cavaleras, Vince Ferrara right here, Ryan Callahan, Will West. Appreciate all you guys for being here today. All right. As I said, it's the unofficial start of football season when the SEC Media Days rolls around. You just finished that up in Dallas, Texas. Vince and Will were there, which we'll talk to you a little bit more about that a little later. But let's start with basically the big takeaway. Everybody waits to see what the media says. Now, the media rarely gets this thing right in terms of who's going to get the championship, but let's go ahead and take a look at their predictions for the fall. Georgia, #1, Texas, #2, Alabama, 3. And now, take this with a grain of salt, of course, because Vanderbilt and South Carolina got first place votes. So when we say media, the SEC just makes money off these people. So if you run ilovevandy.com, they will let you in, and you count as media. So some idiots go down there and pick Vanderbilt every year and snicker and giggle because they're morons.
Record 1,200 plus media there. So.
Yeah, real media. Okay. And there, 1,188, not media. But anyway, Tennessee 7th. I talked to some people last week that felt, okay, Tennessee will be 6th, maybe 5th, 7th. All right, let's just start. Is that a slight, Will West, or does the media have them in the right place?
I think they have them right. That's the order. The first 10 are the order that I had. And that, well, I guess flip Missouri and LSU. But otherwise, I had exactly that order. I think Tennessee is going to be 7th. A lot of this is we're trying to figure out the schedules aren't equitable anymore. Some teams have easier schedules in the SEC than others. Used to, West played the West, East played the East. You had one opponent that might be different, but that's about it. I think trying to figure out what Missouri and Ole Miss are going to do with a seemingly easier schedule is a little bit difficult right now. And so you think their win total will be higher. I think Tennessee is behind LSU right now. And so I think 7th is about right. I don't think that's a slight. I still think you can go 9-3 and finish 7th in the conference this year because of the way the schedules are set up.
It's just people are going to have to get used to seeing 16 teams, or in the Big Ten, 18 teams, and somebody's got to go somewhere. So when you put the strata like that, somebody's going to be 7th, 8th, 9th, down to whatever. What do you think? Is that right or wrong?
Just to pick a side, because I do think it's close, I will say they didn't get slighted. Because I would have them, if I was ranking them and doing my own tiebreakers, 5th, ahead of LSU and Missouri. However, I think the reality of this league is you're going to have like 3, 4, maybe 5 teams with the same record in certain spots. And then you're really getting into semantics and little tiebreakers and stuff like that. So it all can come out in the wash or just with the lottery balls and be about the same. So I would have Tennessee 5th, but they could all very well have the same record.
Right. I tell you what, until you look at that Missouri schedule, I would have Tennessee 6th. But I think the Missouri schedule is the easiest in the history of the 16-team SEC. That's how easy I think it is. I mean, the only team they play that's ranked above them, in the 5 above them, is at Alabama. So, I mean, you can look at that schedule, even though they lost their defensive coordinator, they lose on defense. But that's why I think you bump them up. In Tennessee, I think that's about right.
The graphic that John has showed on this show to us, where the Vegas opponent win totals for everybody in the league, and Oklahoma had by far the hardest, LSU 54, Tennessee 52, Missouri 51, tied with Texas with the easiest schedule. So that right there would tell you their schedule is not that different.
Yeah, it's interesting. You got Ole Miss, LSU, Tennessee, and Missouri all right between 51 and 55 opponent victories according to Las Vegas.
Right.
And those are the teams that are kind of bunched there together.
Right.
And I think that's, it is a product of the schedule. Ryan, is that a slight?
I'll say a minor slight.
A slight
It's not
slight?
Yeah, slight. Exactly. It's not a big one. I think like Ben said, they're so close. You're splitting hairs between 5 and 7, I think, in a lot of ways. But Tennessee, Missouri, LSU, those are the right 3 to bicker about. I would have had them 5th or 6th. 6 probably seems about right to me. But it really depends on what you think of LSU. I think LSU has a bunch of wild cards. They got a new quarterback. We have no idea what they're going to look like in the post-Jaden Daniels era. I'm not as high on LSU as some people, but I get it. They get the benefit of the doubt. They might have a more talented roster top to bottom. So it doesn't insult me that Tennessee's 7th, but like I would say it's this minor slight because it's a borderline playoff team with legitimate reason.
It also doesn't take into account somebody's going to break an ankle.
Yeah.
Somebody's going to lose somebody to a knee injury. We don't know that.
Achilles.
Yeah, I mean, we don't know that stuff yet.
What I think it reflects is the All-SEC ballot that we'll get into later.
we'll get
is
into
that
that.
Tennessee doesn't have much star power. That's part of what people look at, and they only notice a couple of names that they recognize.
Missouri only has one All-SEC. We'll get into that later. And that's a burden, right?
Yeah, and that's the thing that's funny is we always go, well, their schedule is easier. But as I've shown on here and as Vince has written down there, according to Las Vegas, their schedule is not easier than Tennessee's. They're both right there at like 52, 51 wins for their opponents. Well, you've said something, we've talked about this on radio, but you've said it on radio. We haven't talked about it. Now I'm going to challenge you with it. The fact that you said that SEC schedules are no longer equitable.
They are not.
I would make I agree with that, but I would make the case they weren't equitable to start with. It was just simply, instead of these teams could be easy and these could be hard, it was West is hard, East is easy.
It could be that. There were times that was the case.
Yeah,
yes.
I didn't think it was I didn't think it was that equitable back in the day. I think fans in the West would tell you this isn't equitable. We don't get the chumps. Whereas Tennessee fans would always say, "Oh, we play the devil's schedule. We got Alabama and Georgia and Florida." So I don't know that it was that much more equitable before. I just think it was more split down lines than it is now. Agree, disagree, make your point.
I think to some extent. I think that the schedules now, they are clearly trying to do a top tier, middle tier, bottom tier. And if you're in the middle tier, they give you fewer of the top tier. If you're in the top tier, you get more of the top tier. Alabama's schedule is ridiculous this year, honestly. Regardless of what Vegas wants to, where the Vegas win total is, I just think it's insane. Texas is pretty darn easy.
Yeah, they got the easiest in the league.
Oklahoma's is incredibly difficult.
Yeah.
So it's just a little bit all over the place, but it doesn't ever work out the way it looks on paper, right?
Exactly.
So, which is one of the reasons why I always push back on the eyeball test as the determining factor of who gets into the playoff, because paper never really tells the story in true playoff sports, or rarely does. So on paper, it looks this way. This is why I'm saying, the media, we're always wrong, right? This is, I think, my 12th that I've been to. We're always wrong. The other side of it is none of us know what this new dynamic's going to look like. Because if Texas A&M's better than if they play to their talent level,
Right. If
all
Mike
of a
Elko
sudden
gets
that
something out of
changes
them.
everything, right? About
Right.
people having to play Texas A&M. In Missouri, losing a couple of linemen, if that becomes a difference maker, what Brady Cook and Luther Burden can do, then all of a sudden maybe their schedule doesn't look nearly as
If
easy.
Oklahoma gets a bunch of new linemen in there who
Yeah.
gel quicker
Right.
than we all think,
Yep.
maybe that. So you don't know all that.
And
stuff,
really,
but-
don't you think to judge the SEC schedule, you need to look at it after 2 seasons?
Probably.
When you wrote in Texas and Texas and Oklahoma are rotated in and out, and maybe some other things. To me, I think that's how you look at it and see.
It
how
looks
it
like we're
stacks
going to get this schedule again next year,
Yep.
and then maybe they'll go to 9, maybe.
Maybe.
Couple things I disagree real quick
Quickly.
on Will. One, I don't see the tiering that they did with this year's schedule. Maybe you see a
That
vision
was
that I
honestly
don't.
that was a thing from the Athletic that was said that when they were
Okay.
putting this together.
And the other thing is the SEC, the media has done a little bit better job as of late. Like historically, they've gotten it butchered. 5 of the last 10 years, they have correctly picked the national
champ.
champion. So at least it's not the absolute. This team will not win the championship.
Oh, yeah.
Alabama and Georgia have made it easier.
Yes, they have.
They have made it
Yeah,
a lot
that's you're basically just flipping a coin between those two. All right, because it was like there was a streak there before this big run by Alabama and Georgia where it was like 10 straight years that it hadn't been correct. All right, when we come back, Heupel says his roster is deep, but as Ryan alluded to, only 2 Vols made the All-SEC list. Who's correct? Does the coach know his roster, or does the media know it better? We'll discuss. Come on back. Welcome back to the Sports Source. This segment brought to you by A.G. Hines Company for more than 100 years. Think about that. A century. It's like 4 years past a century now. 104 years. East Tennessee construction companies and do-it-yourselfers alike have trusted and turned to A.G. Hines Company for their building materials and their tools. You can do the same, folks. Our commercials that run for them, we talk about the fact that great-granddaddy Albert Hines opened the place. Well, if you've got a home here in Knoxville, your great-granddaddy might have bought the materials from great-granddaddy Albert Hines. That's how long A.G. Hines Company has been around. That tells you something. It's quality. It's good people. Get down and see them this week. All right, let's do a poll question, and then we're going to kind of talk about what the poll question tells us a little bit. Only 2 Vols made the preseason All-SEC team. What does that mean? Here are your options. 1, it means the media hates UT. Obviously. Next, it means target the 2025 playoff. This isn't the year. Target next year. Or the last one it's tied at the moment, don't mean nothing. We are playoff bound this year. So it either means media hates you, it means target next year, this is a stepping stone year, or it means absolutely nothing, they're going to the playoffs this year. So use your smartphone, hit the QR code, tell us what you think, vote, and then you can watch the little orange lines move. And then also you can go to sportsource.tv and just go to polls and vote that way if you prefer. Okay. Josh Heupel was on 99.1 The Sports Animal with Josh and Swain this week, and he had this to say about his team. It's a short quote, but we'll put it up here. We've got, without a doubt, the deepest roster that we've had. We're at the best point that we've been, not even close. That sounds pretty good. But as I said, when you looked at the 3 All-SEC offensive teams, the 3 All-SEC defensive teams, and the All-SEC special teams units, only 2 Vols made the list. First-teamer Cooper Mays on offense, first-teamer James Pierce on defense. That is it. So Josh Heupel says it's their best, deepest roster. Everybody else looks at it and says, you got 2 stars that even make first team, second team, third team, special teams. Who's right?
Closer.
Chuck,
Oh, sorry. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Chuck, who's right? You're laughing. I'll make you go
Well,
first.
I tell you what, I'm going to put more stock in what Josh Heupel says, because I think what he's looking at is, if you're not just looking at the very top, you're looking at like 1 through 75. You're looking at the depth you have for competition, for playing time, for starting positions. And when you look at it, guys, look at what you lost in your secondary with all those guys that are gone. You don't have much experience at linebackers.
Of course, I remember when that was happening, I was reading on social media that UT wanted rid of all
Well,
those guys.
but I mean, still, when you're looking at all conference players, you really had to do something last season, right? As a rule, Tennessee has got some spots where they got good young talent, but they don't have a lot of guys who made a mark last season. So I can see where they're coming from.
Yeah, I think there's a difference between what Josh Heupel was talking about in terms of his entire roster and their depth chart versus an all SEC team. But where now you're looking for name recognition versus now I have 8 wide receivers that I would trust, or hey, maybe we're the deepest we've been on the defensive line with 14 guys that we would trust, where that a lot of other SEC teams wouldn't. But is there anyone else besides James Pierce Jr. that has the star power, even though that group is good? I do think there's a difference in what he's talking about.
Okay, I just think that, to me, it's a little surprising that Dylan Sampson didn't make any of those teams.
Should've been.
Omar Norman Lott didn't find his way into third string
Amari
defense.
Thomas is the
Amari
one that
Thomas,
I-
well, I'm just throwing
Amari
guys- yeah.
Yeah, well, a lot. I would say this. I believe Josh Heupel. I agree with him. Not with the media. Part of that is I think Josh Heupel can finally play who he wants to play as opposed to who he has to play at certain positions. So I think that's a big thing for a coach. The other thing is sometimes like when you look at the list of players, like we voted in the All SEC media thing this year. You're choosing between players that just have been big in recruiting or were solid backups for a team. We have no idea how they're going to play when they step into a starting role. You have certain limitations on who you can choose. So, but I also think Tennessee doesn't have elite talent. They don't have elite players, but they have a quality depth of pretty good players right now. And maybe those guys can develop and become elite players. But does Tennessee have how many guys that are going to be first round or day 2 even draft picks? No. 2 tops?
Ryan, I'll let you go first.
I agree. I think what Josh Heupel is saying, like that, to their point, is I've got the deepest roster I've had. I'm worried about the 2 deep more so than the 1 through 5 on this roster. But
Technically, you're too deep on the All-SEC team, too.
yes, that's true. That's true. But I do think to Will's point, we're guessing at a lot of this these days more than ever because of the transfer portal, because young players make an impact more than they used to. We don't know if Nico is what we think he is. He'll be a third-team All-SEC player at least. I think there will be some guys in there that we just don't know about yet because they're second-year players who haven't played much.
You've also, think of how many Tennessee players off this team would be on the list if it was still a 10-team league. You've added 2 more teams.
Yes.
So it keeps watering it down a little bit. But when you've got Georgia, Texas, and Alabama, who everyone thinks are pretty good shots at the playoff, okay, they're going to get more players on there. I wouldn't worry about this, though. Because here's the thing. 2 years ago, or was it 2 years ago? Hendon Hooker's second year here. I guess it was 2 seasons ago. Did anyone really picture him being the star he was going to, he should have gone to New York. I didn't see that. So this preseason hype stuff, you look at it and you say, there's no elite talent there. Turns out Jalen Hyatt, the jump he made between year 2 and year 3, told us, that guy's got the drops. Then he went to, he's elite, super elite.
Develop.
Bolitnikoff award-winning elite. So this wouldn't be something I would lose any sleep
No, well, and you may have the best rush in the country, right? You're going to have a guy, maybe one of the top 5 picks in the draft. We don't know that quite yet, but I wouldn't trade him for many players, would you?
No.
And then Cooper Mays, what are your chances of winning or losing if he's in the lineup or
also,
not?
the other centers in the league are not that great. There's a lot of good turnover there. But there's also Brew McCoy. You can't consider Brew McCoy for one of those teams because he's coming off of that injury.
Right.
Javonte Spraggins.
Why not?
You can't consider him because he's coming off of that injury. So
Well, you don't know.
that's what I'm saying.
Keenan Peele. Well, I think.
You saw Keenan Peele
you're
play for
absolutely
what?
right.
30
a
snaps.
quarter last year?
Yeah, 30
Yeah.
snaps, they said. Yeah.
Yeah, but I think that's what hurt Tennessee in the total numbers is you had 3 key guys there that would normally have consideration or maybe be there that people wondered about in terms of the injury.
I think these all preseason lists are completely useless. Show me the coaches list at the end of the year.
Right.
That's the one.
Exactly.
I don't care about the AP. Show me the coaches list at the end of the year. Or I should say the SID list at the end of the year. That gives you a better idea of who the other teams had that were talented, because you've got an idea. So much of this is just hype, preseason hype, and so much of it is, as you said, what the hell does recruiting have to do with this?
But
You're sitting there going, well, he was a 5-star, so he's got to be. Well, yes, he was great at Ottumwa, Iowa, playing in 3-star, level 3 of their high school unit. That doesn't make me vote someone up in the preseason list, but that's how it works.
But that's what happens because of recognizability, right? People recognize the people that they covered in recruiting. They know this guy had a high upside. Recruiting rankings are a lot more accurate than they used to be. And so because of that, that's kind of who people put into those spots in the preseason.
I don't know. I don't think these recruiting rankings are great. We'll be talking to Ryan about recruiting rankings later.
Sorry, you default to the top teams, the teams that you see.
And his Georgia had 16, is that correct, on the 3 teams?
A lot of Texas, too, and Dallas, too.
Yeah, again, 2 teams that are expected to be in the semifinals of the playoffs.
Exactly.
All right. When we come back, much more on the Vols to come. But next, I want to talk to Vince and Will about what it was like in Dallas. Did it still feel like an SEC event down there? How did Oklahoma and Texas come into the league? Or was it just a crappily run media days this year? that wasn't going to be my initial question, but talking to them, that may find its way in. Coming back. Cabin. It's like you own your own cabin in the Smokies already. Matter of fact, you own like 40. All you have to do is go to Parkside Cabin Rentals and pick the one that's right for you. It's yours. You don't have some neighbor right behind you. You don't have to worry about somebody making too much noise beside you. Get your own place lined up in the spot you want with the layout you want. And when you go into downtown Gatlinburg, you get free parking on top of that. Parkside Cabin Rentals, nobody's better in the Smokies. Check them out today. All right. Back with Vince and Will. We're going to keep this kind of quick, but you guys were in Dallas this week. I want to talk more about the feel. You've added Oklahoma, Texas. Everybody's talking about it. I've been to SEC Media Days before. People will show up. They want autographs. It's kind of it's a fan event very much. Was that the case this time around? I mean, how did Oklahoma and Texas fans fit in? Could you even see the fans this time around?
No, they weren't really a factor. There are a few stragglers that were downstairs, but everything was on the 3rd floor. So a few of them were at the front door, but really no one was coming in and out of there.
Well, when you've seen it in the past, like when they used to do it in Hoover, everyone would gather at that front. Yeah. You'd had to go through the lobby and everybody said, you didn't see that.
The SEC loved that, but that was not. It was about the coverage of it and then the broadcast. So I prefer it that way. I know the SEC for a long time has loved, the championship ring guy and everybody else with the autographs and all that.
Well, I'm just talking about excitement.
Oh, this was bad.
It sounds like they didn't have excitement.
No. I will go.
I mean, was that because Oklahoma and Texas didn't show up?
No.
Or because they put the thing in Texas?
Well, I think one, they put it in Texas. 2, you had a lot of people who have been there. Look, in the past, SEC Media Days was like WrestleMania weekend or a monster truck rally, right? It was awesome. It was just buck wild. Now, ESPN took it over, sanitized it, and now it's kind of like going to an insurance convention. And that's not great. But they're trying to make it better, and they do things to try to welcome the media. I also think you were out in Texas, and there were a lot of people who have been there for years that didn't come. And so I think that, and also for us, we were the only, out of 47 stations on Radio Row, we were the only one that had 3 shows there. And we only had 1 from each show. Most people didn't do that because of how far out it was. I also think not having the fans there, being so far away, clearly the Omni was not ready for SEC Media Days. They had the logistics for a Big 12 Media Days. So nobody had internet, so some stations were leaving early. I know one large major media place, they showed up there for 2.5 hours and said, this is crap. Left.
Okay. These guys, I know you don't care about the media aspect. I just want to know about the fan aspect, meaning, did it feel like an SEC event?
No.
It doesn't sound like it did.
It felt like the last couple to me, only bigger. But from the fans' viewing of it, just because you don't see all that extra stuff with the fans there, I don't think that it takes away from you learning about it or watching your team.
That's not. I'm not trying to. Okay, I feel like you're working for the conference. I'm not trying to.
No.
I'm not downgrading the event and what you can get for it.
Right.
I'm just saying, you put that thing in Dallas. You put it in where was it last year?
Nashville. Yeah.
All right. You got a lot of SEC fans in Nashville at different schools.
Right.
Did they not show up at the lobby
Texas
and stuff last year?
Oklahoma did not.
Did you have people at the lobbies last year?
Well, did they have access last year? I wasn't there. You were.
Okay. Well, if they've cut off access, that's a different deal.
Well, Hoover, there was access. Atlanta, there's access.
Yes, there always was, and you'd see people gathered, and you'd see them walk through.
The
and
fans
it was, hey,
can go get autographs and see their team.
We got Nick Saban next. We got whoever next, and they walk through the aisle, and fans are cheering. And maybe they didn't have that in Nashville last year. I just didn't notice it.
Dallas, they were 2 floors down, around a little rope outside of a door is where the fans had to be.
Well, it's interesting that I just wonder, Dallas is not an SEC market. They can try and make it an SEC market. They can want it to be an SEC market. It's not an SEC market. It is never going to be an SEC market. That is a pro town. It will remain a pro town. So you did this there. It'll be interesting to see how many SEC tournaments you send to Dallas, how many other events you stage in Dallas. Or Oklahoma City. They played an SEC tournament in St. Louis once, and it was ho-hum. They played one in Tampa. They played a couple in Tampa. That's always kind of ho-hum. That's like your fringe area down there. Now you're back to Michigan fans when you hit Tampa.
I was told they were considering doing the basketball tournament in OKC, and they have reconsidered after the lack of people showing up in Dallas.
That would make sense. Okay, very good. We went over. When we come back, the Vols are wrapping up a big month in recruiting. Who'd they get? Who'd they miss on? Who's next? And is this going to be a special class? We'll ask Ryan Callahan and his excellent recruiting rankings next. Come on back. Welcome back into the Sports Source, the segment brought to you by Southeast Termite and Pest Control. Everyone loves spending time on their deck, their patio, their yard in the summer, unless, of course, you're being annoyed by mosquitoes, ants, and those giant carpenter bees that bounce around your head like tennis balls. Southeast Termite and Pest Control can treat your deck, can treat your yard, and can get rid of all those bugs. And that way, you're not driven inside by the bugs. You get to spend your summer outside. Call Southeast Termite and Pest Control. I use them. You can too. They've been around since 1971. Again, like so many of my clients here, like so many of our clients here, family owned, locally owned. Southeast Termite and Pest Control. All right, let's also remind you of the poll question that we've got up. Let's see what that is. Well, I've got a glare on the screen. Looks like it's still kind of close to being tied there. Yeah. 48% say we're playoff bound this year. 45% say target next year. Or only a few of you say that the media hates UT. Come on. That's the reality. All right. Back with Ryan Callahan. I want to talk about recruiting. We got about 7-8 minutes here. Who have the Vols landed? Who have they missed on? And who's coming next? And I'll let you divvy it out right there.
Yeah, so, that's a lot. So the last 2 Saturdays, Tennessee's gotten a commitment each of the past 2 weeks. 4-star wide receiver Travis Smith of Atlanta last week. Yesterday, 4-star linebacker, edge rusher Christian Gass, also out of the Atlanta area. They beat out Georgia legitimately for him. This is a guy Georgia was actually pushing for, made a big priority. They were recruiting him as a linebacker. Tennessee initially wanted him as an edge rusher, kind of shifted its approach because it sounds like he wants to play linebacker. So they're talking both positions now, but a versatile guy. Good speed, good potential at both positions, really. So big pickup there, long-time receiver target last weekend, and several guys still left to go. Did you have something you were going to?
No, yeah, I was just going to throw out there. I guess it's one of the things that changed with the transfer portal.
Yeah.
It used to be, Kentucky, Randall Cobb, the famous situation, he wanted to play quarterback. Tennessee said, well, you're not going to play quarterback here. Kentucky said, we'll give you a shot at quarterback. They gave him a shot at quarterback, and after about 3 hours, they moved him to receiver.
Yeah.
Now, Randall Cobb could say, no, I said quarterback, I'm in the portal. So the idea of we want you as an edge, now we'll move you to linebacker, that can't just be idle talk these days because of the portal. That's all I was going to say.
Yeah, you have to be up front, and that's something Tennessee's conscientious of. All these staffs have to be because if you tell a lie before you had them locked in, what are they going to do?
Didn't
Transfer?
matter.
Wait a couple years? Now they could be in the portal in a semester, so you've got to be pretty truthful about that. So 2 big pickups there. This is sort of a weird July. I was telling you before this segment, usually there's been a lot more commitments by now. Tennessee's in on a lot of targets that for whatever reason this year have waited longer to announce decisions. So it looks like now the month of August might be a little bit bigger than the month of July in some cases. So we'll see when some of these guys who have yet to announce make their decisions. One more set to announce on Saturday. Lagonza Hayward, a 4-star safety, top 100 player out of Georgia that Tennessee is in good shape for there. So there's definitely more to come this summer. It's just a lot of this might wait till next month.
Biggest names still on the board for fans to watch. You got the tackle out of Charlotte.
That's the one, yep. 5-star offensive tackle David Sanders. We've been talking about him for a long time. It's still a big battle down the stretch. He's set to announce on August 17. That's a Tennessee-Ohio State battle primarily down the stretch. Nebraska hanging around in there, but no one I've talked to lately thinks it's going to be them. So still going to probably come down to Tennessee and Ohio State. And so still a few weeks away. We're watching this week. The dead period for recruiting ends this week. Will he go back on the road and take any unofficial visits this week before making that decision? But I think as of right now, I think there's a good chance he won't. But we'll see what he does this week as far as getting back out on the road. But that's one still a few weeks away. There's a 5-star quarterback in the 2026 class still another couple weeks away from a decision. 5-star Faison Brandon out of Greensboro, North Carolina. He'll announce on August 3rd. A couple others in August. 4-star offensive tackle or 5-star offensive tackle Josh Petty and 4-star offensive tackle Juan Gaston out of Atlanta. So both those guys, Tennessee battling for, but probably not the favorite. And then 4-star cornerback Onis Konambani out of South Carolina also announcing sometime in August. So still several guys still out there, in addition to Georgia linebacker commitment Jaden Perlotti that Tennessee is still trying to flip, and 4-star Oregon tight end commitment Desan Brame. So still several names out there and a lot to keep track of over the next 3 weeks or so.
I'm just impressed that you can say all those names. Heck, I'm impressed you can remember all those names. The fact that Tennessee, you just mentioned, they stole a guy, they got it, they went into Georgia and got a guy that Georgia wanted. They're battling Ohio State. Okay, you told us several months ago that they're in on a higher class of player this time around. And it sounds like now you're battling with a higher, because of that, you're battling higher ranked schools and winning against Georgia, might win against Ohio State. All that seems very positive. So let me show you the recruiting rankings for 24/7 Sports. And of course, Ryan is with Go Vols 24/7. Ohio State number 1, Alabama 2, Georgia 3, LSU 4, Oregon, Notre Dame, Texas A&M, Miami, Oklahoma, Tennessee 10th on the list. Now you see no 5 stars. Boy, look at the top of the list. Ohio State 4, Alabama 5, a lot of 5 stars up there. But Tennessee 10th overall, and they're 10th with only 18 players. That would be, let's see, Alabama, Georgia, LSU 3, 4. That'd be 6th in the SEC. Yeah. All right, so here's my question. Top 10. 6th in the SEC. Let's say it finishes right there. Well, first of all, do you think that's about where they finish, or do you think they can get higher?
I think they could get a little higher. It's a lot of it will depend on David Sanders, I think, where he ends up. Because if Tennessee gets him, he's the number 3 player in 24/7 Sports rankings right now. That'd be a big boost to Tennessee's class. They also just recently had George McIntyre as a 5-star commitment, the quarterback from Brentwood Academy. He's now a 4-star on 24/7 Sports. Has moved down a little bit. He's now in the top 100 as opposed to being a 5-star. So that hurt Tennessee a little bit. They don't have that 5-star to anchor the class. If they get that back in David Sanders and an even higher ranked 5-star, that's a big boost. So they could end up, I think, closer to the top 5. I don't think they end up in the top 5, but they could end up 6, 7, 8, somewhere in that range if a lot of things fall their way.
Is this going to be, in your opinion, if I made you guess right now, is this going to be a special class or kind of a really, really good class, but more of a typical Tennessee class? They've been 17, 10, 14. Will it be another between 10 and 20, or will it be inside the top 10? I know you said you could make your guess.
I'll say as of right now, I will lean a little bit toward Tennessee on the David Sanders battle. Again, that one's still to be determined. And sometimes in these, in the NIL era, sometimes you don't know till the final week.
Somebody finds $1 million they didn't have, in the couch cushions.
So in a battle for the number 3 player in the country, who knows what could still happen. But as of right now, I might lean a little toward Tennessee in that one. So if they get him, and I think they might, then that class is going to creep again up the rankings a little bit more. So I'm going to say this leans more toward being a special class. I'm not going to say top 5 good again. I mean, we've seen that before with Butch Jones.
Yeah.
Again, though, that was a class that had 32 players in it, or 28 that year, 29.
Yeah.
So they had some big classes that helped with that. This is not going to be a 30-player class. It's going to be closer to 25, it looks like.
Well, you had fewer than anybody else on that list. Yeah.
And it's still got a chance to be ranked that high. So it's got a chance to be one of Tennessee's better ones in the last 10 to 15 years.
Very good. Ryan, you always do a great job with this. I appreciate it. When we come back, much more on the Vols coming up, but is everyone focusing on the wrong newcomer in the SEC? We're all looking at it saying, well, Oklahoma, they could be in trouble in this league, but Texas is looking really good. Are we all wrong about that? We'll discuss that next. Come on back. Welcome back to the Sports Source. This segment brought to you by Madisonville Marine, Creval, Center Console Boats, Hurricane Deck Boats, Godfrey Aqua Patio Pontoon Boats, G3 John Boats, Skeeter Bass Boats. You notice those are all different types of boats, not just the make and model, but those are different types of boats for different things that you would want to do on the water. You want to ski, you just want to relax with friends and entertain. You want to go out, look, I'm a fisherman. You want to just get out and enjoy yourself in a relaxing boat. They got all types of different boats right there, and their job is to make sure you are in the right one for you. Let's say your wife wants to do this, you want to do this, kids want this. What's the best boat to meet all of your needs? That's why you go to Madisonville Marine. They've been there since 1976. People come from all over. I mean, it's the best deals from Georgia to Middle Tennessee in terms of selection. Actually, it's probably the best in the state, to be honest with you, in terms of the size, the selection. I don't know if anybody's got more. MadMarine.com is where you can learn more, but get down to Highway 411 North in Madisonville. There is no better place to buy a boat. All right, I'm going to make a couple of quick notes here about this Texas-Oklahoma thing, then I'm going to get your quick take on this. I thought it was interesting. The SEC announced this week that no, horns down. Sorry, Texas fans, I'm doing it right on the show. Horns down is not going to be a penalty. If you go into the end zone and taunt a guy like that, that's going to be a penalty like anything else. But the SEC is treating it like the gator chomp, as they should. So that's excellent. I know Texas people weren't happy about that. The SEC also did something that I'm sure Texas people weren't happy about. On the all-SEC list, when they put it out, and they put the little abbreviation by the players. Beside James Pierce and Cooper Mays, it said UT. Beside Texas players, it said Tex, not UT, which...
The real UT.
That's right. There you go. There you go. All right. So that's Texas. We've talked on here. Everybody's talking nationally. A lot of talk about Oklahoma as the team that's probably going to... If one of these teams is going to struggle in the SEC, it's going to be Oklahoma because they're stuck off in the hinterlands. They're not going to be as good. Texas is going to be the one that takes off and flies. That seems to be, I mean, we've talked about on this show, it's my feeling. I've said that.
Right.
It was my feeling. I don't know if it is anymore, but look at this. Let's look at the Big 12 years here from 1996 forward, Texas and Oklahoma. All right, there's your overall record since 96. Win percentage 75 for Oklahoma, 68 for Texas. Big 12 titles, 14-4. Top 10 finishes, 15-8. They both have one national title. Of course, that 2000 for Oklahoma, the quarterback was Josh Heupel. Head-to-head wins, well, the Red River, you can't say shootout anymore, though I just did. They now call it the Red River rivalry. Anyway, 18-11. Oklahoma, 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 Oklahoma.
Yeah.
Do we have it all wrong about which of these programs is going to be better in the SEC? Because everybody seems to lean toward Texas. Vince, should it be Oklahoma instead, or are we right to say it's Texas?
We're right to say it's Texas because it's the here and now. Yes, that's historically, and those are the facts. Oklahoma always really good at feasting on the lesser competition. Texas would trip up on that, but Oklahoma would always be really good, and the Big 12 hasn't been stacked. But I think the here and now, there's the coaching advantage for Texas, there's the talent advantage for Texas, there's the recency of Texas being in the playoff last year. So I think the trends take you towards Texas. Yes, there were the years of, hey, wait a minute, everybody's talking about Texas being back, and they're not. But I do think last year was a confirmation they're on the most solid ground they have been in a long time. I think they have the easier adjustment into the SEC.
Yeah, but it seems like a lot of people have forgotten who was the only team to beat Texas in the regular season last year. It was Oklahoma. I mean, and you look at the tradition of that program, 7 national titles, 7 Heisman Trophy winners. And I think there is, but I think what happened, John, is the way Lincoln Riley left Oklahoma in the lurch and practically devastated that program, kind of like Lane Kiffin did with Tennessee, that they had so much more ground to make up, to me. But I can see where the love is for Texas. But even in the series history, like that graphic points out, you just got to give more credit to Oklahoma. They seem to be getting.
You also didn't go out and get a big-name proven head coach.
Right.
You got a longtime defensive coordinator who had passed on it for a lot of years. To put it in Tennessee terms, it would have been like Tennessee saying, you know what, let's give it to John Chavis.
Yeah.
Brent Venables had never wanted that, never jumped at that. He takes it. And I think there's, even though Sarkisian, washed out his first 2 jobs due to personal reasons, people look at it as like Sarkisian is up there with Kiffin. He's just one of those guys like Kiffin who is viewed as, oh, he's great. He's just great. And it's like, well, has he won a title yet? No, it doesn't matter. He's great. Whereas Venables has there's a different vibe with him because he hasn't done it before. So to me, I think it may be a little bit too much recency bias. And I'm throwing this at myself because I'm the one who said, I think Oklahoma could be in trouble in this league. The more I look at it and think about it, it's like, why do I think that? Because Texas is suddenly going to take off in the SEC? Texas A&M didn't. Texas A&M had more resources than anybody in the league. When they came in with all their oil money, they didn't take off.
No.
So I think Texas does have the advantage now, but I don't know that necessarily means over the next 27 years, those numbers you saw in the Big 12 are going to flip in the SEC. I'm starting to waver on that a little bit.
Yeah, I don't think there's that kind of gap between the two. I don't think Oklahoma becomes Mississippi State historically in
Right.
the league, anything like that. I do think they will be competitive. They'll be in the top half of the league. But I do think if you're looking for a conference championship contender out of those two, someone that can mark, I do think it's Texas.
Certainly right now. Certainly early on, they're coming in a much better
Exactly.
situation. All right, when we come back, we'll discuss what Greg Sankey and SEC sources, a lot of SEC sources were quoted this week. We'll see what they had to say about expansion and about Florida State specifically. Interesting stuff. Come on back on the Sports Source. Welcome back to the Sports Source. This segment brought to you by Daniel Hood Roofing. Daniel and his inspectors, when you have them come out to do a free inspection, they are not going to tell you there's a problem with your roof if there's not a problem with your roof. How do I know that? Well, they prove to you there's a problem with your roof. They actually show you video. They actually have equipment that can show exactly how much how much moisture is getting through your shingles. And they can, and I know you're sitting there saying, well, it's doctored, it's set up to do this. You can see them put it up to their arms or their hands, touch their skin with it, rating goes to 0. You put it back in the shingles, it goes up. They've got the equipment, they've got the experience, the expertise. Call Daniel Hood Roofing, get a free inspection this week. You want to replace your roof before you see a ceiling stain inside because that means too much damage has already been done. DanielHoodRoofing.com. All right, let's take a look at the poll results. Oh, man, it was tied as of a second ago, but playoff bound is the winner as of right now, unless somebody votes again. But only 2 Vols making the preseason All-SEC teams. To you, that means, well, about half of you say target the 2025 playoff. The other half, a little more than half, nothing. Doesn't mean a thing. We're playoff bound this year. All right, very good. So 92% basically aren't that worried about it. Okay. Greg Sankey was asked about expansion this week. He dodged the topic, as every good conference commissioner does, in order to avoid lawsuits. You can't come out and say, man, Clemson looks great. So he said, we are focused on our 16. SEC sources spoke with Brett McMurphy, longtime reporter, very good reporter, and he wrote that they all told him that the league is happy at 16, and specifically they don't want Florida State, okay? And he was told they don't want Florida State because Florida State hasn't been a good partner in the ACC, and the SEC is already in the state of Florida. And I've seen a lot of people repeat that and go, aha, they're not a good partner, and the SEC is already in Florida. So there. And I'm sitting there thinking, who's the worst partner in the history of conferences? That's Texas, and the SEC was already in Texas when they brought Texas in. So my question to you guys, all this talk is the fact that they're not interested, they're not looking, and I believe that. I believe they're not looking. All that goes out the window the minute the ACC collapses, in my opinion. Do you guys agree that they're going to keep we only want 16? We're focused on if the ACC blew up tomorrow, isn't the SEC getting involved there?
Without question. And part of it is that I think the SEC is fine until the ESPN tells them they're not fine. So how much money does Florida State bring in? Is it enough to add $80 to $90 million per year to the conference? And if they did, then the SEC would probably want to take them. If you're ESPN right now and you hold all of the rights to SEC's games, you already have Florida State's rights for $35 million a year. Why would you hand them $80 million per year to come into the SEC, right?
Well, yeah, that tells me ESPN isn't going to try and blow up the ACC. Now, they've got a look-in coming up here, I guess, in a year or 2 years where they can kind of nuke that deal they've got. But I don't think they're going to. But here's the thing. If Florida State wins their lawsuit, then it's out of ESPN's hands.
It is.
So.
And then they probably go to the Big 12. So it's a possibility. What's what people were saying this week.
Yeah.
I do think that I don't think the ACC is going anywhere because if Florida State and Clemson could get out of their contract, they would get out of their contract and they would be out right now. So I don't think it's going anywhere. I think ESPN holds those rights for 50 cents on the dollar. And I think the SEC can want them or not want them. They're going to do what the broadcast partner tells them to do. And so I think they're happy now. But that can change the second ESPN changes it.
Although here's the thing about the broadcast partner. ESPN wasn't happy. I mean, I don't think they gave them the marching orders to go get Texas and Oklahoma because they're not paying them for an extra game. So I get what you're saying, that it's all about the TV running it. I think the TV networks are also as screwy right now as the conferences are Because if you're ESPN, you're looking at it and you're saying it's going to be Fox, NBC, CBS versus us. All right, we need as many good games as we can get. We don't want to just be 16 teams and everybody else, the other 50 are in this Big Ten thing. It'd be interesting. Ryan, what's your take?
Yeah, well, first of all, Greg Sankey's saying what he has to, as you said.
Yes.
It's you're avoiding lawsuits. You're never interested until it's already in the wheels are already in motion, basically.
Yeah.
So they're not, nothing's imminent. I think that's maybe the point to look at right now is that all this is going to take some time to play out. They've got to figure out what's going to happen with the ACC. That lawsuit gets resolved and everything starts moving. The SEC is going to be interested still, but the Big 12 stuff sounds more believable right now. I mean, honestly, I'm not sure the SEC is desperate to go down that road, but again, this to me is all a standoff between the SEC and the Big Ten.
Yes,
If they get the idea that the Big Ten's moving elsewhere, they're going to move on Florida State and Clemson. That's where I think this is going.
I think that's what the Big Ten did when you added Texas and Oklahoma. They suddenly go get USC and UCLA. Then the Pac-12 blows up, so they're like, okay, we'll take Oregon and Washington at a discount rate. I do think, though, that the SEC, if they're looking at it and they think the Big Ten's going to do something, I think they're going to do something. Yep. The interesting thing is, at some point, I said last week 2036. It's 2034. The rights would have to remain with the ACC if Florida State or Clemson left. If you got private equity money coming into the Big 12, which is what it looks like they're going to do, you may be able to say, here's your money.
We'll pay the grant of rights.
Yeah, and you just pay us back.
Yeah.
And that way Florida State and Clemson are out of there, and they're making more, so they're paying that off. I don't know. It's going to be interesting.
One thing to watch, and this is just a thesis of mine, Texas A&M's clearly not happy right now.
Yeah.
They did nothing at media days. They're ever talking to people who cover them. They are super not happy. If they had got a Big Ten invite, I think they take it right now, and then does the SEC add teams after that?
It's funny. I was reading a guy who writes for Gig'em. I think that's 24/7, right? Yeah. I've read his stuff for years, and his take was, why do people keep saying this? He said, I talked to no one inside the administration who wants to leave the SEC. But the smoke is out there, certainly. One thing I think is funny is, and this gets back to, well, Sankey said this. I'm amazed at how many people in the media take somebody's statement and then say, well, here it is. It was handed down. Man, I went up to Mount Sinai. They handed it to me. There it is. We're done. I mean, I saw somebody, there's some guy now who's learned, it's a radio guy that I've never heard of, who has now learned I can be big every week by just saying, okay, expansion's happening July the 20th.
Hey, the guy in Oklahoma.
Greg Swain.
Yeah.
And this week he said, well, okay, the Big 12 is going to go after this 6 teams. And 400 other media people to get the clicks talk about Greg Swain. I'm like, who the hell is Greg Swain? I've never heard of you. If it's Brett McMurphy, I know Brett McMurphy.
Chip Brown has been in the front of some of this, right?
If I were doing this and somebody was in Oklahoma, I would expect them to say, who the hell is John Pennington?
Yeah.
If I came out here and didn't just say, I think this could happen, I think this could happen, but I reported, oh yeah, it's going to be these 6 teams. Really? Who the heck are you? And yet that stuff just gets kicked around the internet as though it's fact. So anyway, I find that amusing. When we come back, true or false, Nico Iamaleava's brain is going to be more important to Tennessee than his arm or his legs. Let's discuss. Welcome back to Sports Source. This segment brought to you by Safety Systems, home automation, fire and life safety systems, security systems. They do it all, and they do it all well. If you're building a new office, if you're building a new restaurant, if you're building a new condominium, whatever kind of construction company you are, you want to get in touch with these guys first, because you have to put in all of those safety systems, all of the fire systems, fire suppression systems. You have to have all that stuff tested on a regular basis. Safety Systems not only puts it in, not only do they monitor it, they also do the testing. Start with Safety Systems. There's a reason you see their logo all over town in business windows and in front yards. Safety Systems. Okay, everyone is looking at Nico Iamaleava and talking about his athletic ability, his off-platform throws, his strong arm, his accuracy, good touch, the ability to run, keep plays alive. I see that's what everybody's going on and on about, and for good reason. I think we all expect that. That's good stuff. It's good stuff. But there were so many people this week. Let's do some quotes here. Let me go ahead and put these graphics up here. Josh Heupel with Nico, as a young player, reporters give me a lot of questions about him as a leader. Well, he's phenomenal in communication in one-on-one situations and in small groups, but he's taking more and more ownership within our entire offense and within our football team. And when you talk to Cooper Mays about Nico, he said what makes him a great leader for us is just how he acts. For a guy that had all the things he had going on, especially coming out of high school, I don't know that I would have come in very humble and ready to learn. But he's done a great job of taking everything in stride. People respect that. Nico is really a good guy. Keenan Peely, a veteran on the team. A lot of people think he's young, but there's a full team surrounding him that looks at him as a leader. Even just this spring, you saw his growth as a leader, but the talent has always been there for Nico. True or false, his brain and attitude are going to be more important than his much hyped arm and much hyped legs. True or false?
I'm going to go false. I think it's mobility. And what I kept thinking of was the assets Hendon Hooker had in this offense and how much better it was with the plays, unscripted plays he made with his feet. That's what I see that Nico can bring. So, I mean, all the other things, he's got all the attributes. But I think at the end of the day, the mobility to get outside the pocket and make accurate throws is what I think is the big thing for him.
I do think it's his brain. I think that it's his ability to process information incredibly quickly, because if this offense doesn't run at tempo, then you just have a really base high school, maybe middle school level offense if you don't run at tempo in this.
Everybody says it's a simple offense. It becomes very simple if you're not going 100 miles an hour.
So you have to go tempo. So for me, it's more about Nico throwing, because Joe couldn't make the on-platform throws. I don't care about your off-platform throws. How often do you do that? You're going to throw 25 times from the pocket. Nico can do that, and he can make the quick decision of when does he run, when does he throw, where does he need to have the ball, and you can run at the tempo you need to, which helps out your running game, which then helps out your deep passing game.
Ryan.
I think it's his brain. I think that's more important, but it's because I would say that with almost any quarterback. I think it's all about processing. That's such a mental position. When we rate quarterbacks, and we've struggled with this as a recruiting industry, I think, for years. The physical talent is there with so many guys, but it all comes down to, can they get everything right? Can you make the right decisions when
Stetson Bennett,
when everybody's coming at you? And Nico it's going to be no different for him. He's got all the talent in the world physically. He can run, and that helps him. That's a big advantage. But if he can't make the right decisions, none of that's going to matter, as we saw with Joe Milton sometimes.
Boy, do I want to Cavaleris this question, because
let's hear the Cavaliers thing first, then I'll tell you. Then I'll make a ruling.
Okay, the Cavalerising of it is both.
Yeah.
You need to be
No,
able
I
to
don't like it.
process and make the accurate throws down the field. Look,
Overruled.
those quotes from Heupel and Cooper Mason and Keenan Peely of how he handles people, especially in the one-on-ones, that's what we saw in practice. Practices were so different than Joe Milton, where he would throw a pass and then he was hyping guys or dancing or just trying to motivate, where Nico is talking to his receiver afterwards and all about business and getting better as individuals. So that stuff is important. And then, I don't know if this factors in brain, it factor. That, to me, is the tiebreaker between all those talents, the accuracy down the field, all that kind of stuff, the legs. But the it factor for him, to me, was what would sway me a little bit in that direction.
that's
as
brain.
I get out of it. Yeah,
I'm on brain side, so I'm switching that to brain.
That's
It
why
counts as brain.
it takes me over to that side.
It equals brain. Sorry, Chuck, you're on your own. I'm going brain. And Joe Milton. The answer is Joe Milton. That's the reason for the answer. Yes, I think that Nico is going to be able to keep plays alive, and I think that's a great thing. But didn't we see Joe Milton a few times just run like a bat out of hell? He looked great at times. Had the first play of the game against two that was the long touchdown run
Texas
last
San
year.
Antonio.
Yeah. So, but the point is, there were also times when he would step out of bounds, short of a first down. So, brain, he could run. He didn't like to run that much. Now, they said he liked to get hit. I don't buy that. He didn't like to run that much. In terms of arm, you'll never find a better arm than Joe Milton. He just wasn't very accurate with it, which comes back to brain. So to me, brain is going to be more important than legs or arm.
Whether to keep or pull it on his own read, whether which receiver to throw to.
Get him in the right run play.
Yep.
Yeah.
But there's also times in this offense where you're not going breakneck speed, too, right? Tennessee
Hopefully
doesn't have a
not.
4-minute offense. It's stand there and let the clock tick.
I want it to be breakneck.
And then we're going to run a play.
Hendon Hooker, he saved their backside on some plays too. So that escapability is a factor.
Yeah, but I think that's a factor, certainly.
Yeah.
And I'm not downplaying his arm or his legs,
Right.
but it's knowing when to use them and how to use them.
Right.
You had a guy, the hype when Joe Milton got here was he can do it all. And we saw you got to be able to do it all and know when to do it and
At the
how
right
to do
time,
it.
yeah.
And if you don't have that,
Then you're completing 20% of your passes at 20 yards downfield or more.
And the
Yeah.
brain brings trust from the coaches too. Just to throw a little.
Yep.
all right. When we come back, Neyland Stadium ranked the 10th best stadium in the country by ESPN. Let's talk about that list. I'm not even going to tell you what we're going to do. We're just going to talk about it. Come on back. We'll talk about where Neyland Stadium ranks as a stadium. Welcome back to the Sports Source. This segment brought to you by Games and Things. Folks, if you want a home theater in your home, then you need to get to Games and Things because they got home theater seating second to none in all of Knoxville. You can go in there and try out seat after seat after seat. They've got all kinds of makes and models and brands. Get in there, it is something. And of course, they're also great for creating a game room. Makes sense with games right there in the name. But their things are pretty good too. Because life should be fun, and they will help you make your home fun, I promise you. Check them out at the corner of Kingston Pike and Lovell Road. You'll be in there for a good hour at least. Games and Things. All right, ESPN ranked college football's top stadiums. These are the top 12. LSU with Tiger Stadium, the Rose Bowl, UCLA, Michigan Stadium, Notre Dame Stadium, Beaver Stadium, Husky Stadium, Washington. I've always heard that talked about. I've never seen it on anyone's top 10 list ever. Ohio State with Ohio Stadium, Camp Randall at Wisconsin, Bryant Denny ahead of Neyland, Memorial Stadium at Clemson, and then Mikey Stadium, Army. Of course, that's one I think everybody would love to see. But this is my question. It's subjective. You don't know how you're ranking this. The Rose Bowl, I would love to see it if it's a bowl game being played.
Right.
If there's 15,000 UCLA fans, it's not that big of a draw. But is Alabama ahead of you because they just win there all the time? Because I would put Neyland ahead of Bryant Denny.
Yep.
So if you're just talking bucket list, not us, but Joe sports fan, okay? Which ones on that list are bucket list? I think Notre Dame is.
Rose Bowl.
Rose Bowl for a bowl game, I guess.
Yeah, for a bowl game.
Michigan Stadium's the
yeah.
biggest in the country. I think it would be.
LSU.
LSU Tiger Stadium, yeah.
Yeah.
But
I
I
would
don't
say-
really think you feel
Let's
that
put
way
that
about Penn State, do you?
Yeah, see, that
so
stadium's
whiteout
only
at Penn State
1960.
is something I would love to be able to
Whiteout.
experience. A whiteout at Penn State, Camp Randall jump
The
around.
jump around.
I want to experience that. Mitchie Stadium, I think, of course, we all see because of the Army. I think part
Touching
of
Howard's Rock, and they run into Clemson.
Yeah. There's part of when it comes to stadiums like this and lists, it's about memorable moments.
Yeah.
And Tennessee hasn't created one in 20 years.
Yeah, no, that Alabama win.
yeah,
That
I
was,
mean,
I mean, that was nice for Tennessee. And
Everybody
it was
in
a
the
nice
nation saw that
little
thing.
moment.
49?
It was a nice little moment.
That was all over.
But it was
nice
a
little
singular
moment. Hindsight.
moment
he's
that
got-
meant
Come on,
nothing
man.
in the grand scheme at the end of the day. It
You're-
just was a
you know
feel-good.
we needed a Stephen A. moment, so
Look,
you
that
brought
was
it out.
Look, it
It's
was a
good.
great win. That's an ice
Okay.
cream cone. It's delicious and it melts in
No,
5
that's
seconds.
I've talked to people.
no,
I went to a game once with a guy. This was before we started the show. A guy who was from Nebraska, who had one of those guys that had visited like 20 stadiums.
Right.
And Neyland Stadium was on his bucket list.
Yeah.
I think Neyland Stadium and I think Ohio Stadium in Columbus, the Shoe, are both bucket list stadiums.
Neyland's top 7 at worst on that list.
I think so
mean,
too. I put it ahead of Husky Stadium.
I think it's a great
Wisconsin.
stadium.
With
I think
the-
Bryant Denny's been upgraded more recently than Neyland
Right.
has. When they renovate Neyland, that will be a difference maker. But just right now, part of it for people all over the nation, we're living in it in Knoxville. They're not. They've seen one quality moment from Tennessee in 20 years, and that was the Alabama win.
But it's
right?
a great atmosphere.
It's great. And that doesn't mean it's bad.
Well,
it
if
just
you're a
means
Joe Bowl fan, you
nationally-
just want to go to a game.
Yeah,
you
but I
don't
will
care
say,
who wins.
Oklahoma, I heard from so many Oklahoma people that fans say that's the best trip they've ever been on.
Well, there you
this
go.
week alone.
That's the point. I
So,
know.
so it's great, but I don't think it's as renowned because Tennessee's not been good in a while.
You know what we haven't talked
Okay.
about yet? Checker Neyland.
That's
The white-
exactly what I was going to say.
The fireworks, that whole
the
thing.
white-
the
Neyland
lighting
at
show.
night is like up there,
Yeah.
in top 5.
Running through the tee, you see that it's in the it's
Yeah.
in the video game, and the way they've recreated that shows you there's so many
Look,
moments.
that was such an off the wall point. Let's move on. Let's stop beating him up. Let's
it
forgive
wasn't
him.
in the top 20 in the game either.
It's Sunday.
Top 10. It's 13.
Oh, yeah, no, you're right. It was the top 10, yeah.
I think, look, I've been to Ohio Stadium in Columbus a million times, and I can tell you those teams need to play each other. Because everything Ohio State does is what Tennessee does.
Right.
Everything Tennessee does is what Ohio State
dot
does.
the-
Ancient stadiums, bands, both on the side of a river.
Right.
I'm telling you, those teams need to get together. And having been at both, there's a special aura in those buildings that you get. That's why I would love to go to Army. That would be on my list. Is there anybody else in the SEC? I was surprised Texas A&M, which has the biggest stadium in the conference, wasn't
Yeah.
on there.
Florida.
I was going to say, the Swamp.
The Swamp, to me, is a top 5 or 6 stadium in the country.
I think Joe Blow, average fan from wherever, would say Florida.
Yep.
The Swamp.
Like you said, a lot of this is recent history. It's who's
That-
won.
What about
That's a
Darrell
lot
Oil?
of it,
Yeah.
is who's
What about Darrell Oil Stadium at Texas?
Would you take that or the Cotton Bowl? Which one would you do?
I've been to the Cotton Bowl,
Yeah.
You talk about needing some upgrades.
but still, that's a
Yeah, historically.
well. When I went, it was a bucket list thing to go.
Yeah.
So there you go. All right, we got to catch a break.
When things are going well, Auburn is one of the loudest.
Yes.
that's true.
Yeah.
I've been there. I hate that place. All right. When we come back, the Vols are considered to be in the playoff mix along with many others. So will it be a disappointment if they don't mix their way into the playoffs? Let's discuss that. Welcome back in. We've been beating up Will for the last 3 minutes. This segment brought to you by Hearthside Bank. From southeastern Kentucky, where I grew up, right down to Farragut, Hearthside Bank is always within reach. It's a bank where the word neighbor actually means something. Do me a favor. It's a great feeling when you walk into one of these places. Just very friendly. I almost want to say it's an old-fashioned. They've got everything you need in the modern bank, but it's got an old-fashioned friendly feel, which is what I want, and I think most people want. Do yourself a favor, visit a Hearthside Bank location this week, or check out hearthsidebank.com. Again, they're located right here in Farragut, full-service bank, personal banking, business banking, financial planning, home mortgages, much, much more. hearthsidebank.com. All right, I want to say congrats to Knoxville's own Todd Helton, who goes into the Baseball Hall of Fame today. And we've all seen his display at Cooperstown is going to have a Tennessee football helmet in it, which is kind of cool for Vol fans out there. But congratulations to Todd Helton. I wanted to just throw out one thing here. We talked about it at the beginning of the show. We only got a couple minutes. Talked about it at the beginning of the show. Tennessee's kind of in that playoff mix. You got Georgia, Texas, Alabama are kind of seen up here. Then you get into the Ole Miss, LSU, Missouri, Tennessee, Oklahoma, Texas A&M. Who's one of these teams going to get in the right mix, and it's going to the gel, everything's going to gel, schedule's going to break the right way. You're in that mix. My question is, if you are in the mix, is it a disappointment if you don't make the playoff?
Yeah, I think it's a disappointment. That doesn't mean you're firing everyone, but it's okay to be disappointed if you don't make the playoff this year if you're in the mix, I think. Again, it's not where you should not expect to, but you can hope to, and if you don't make it, it's okay to be disappointed at the end of the day as a fan.
You and I, as Celtics fans, we lived it all year. It's like, but the Celtics were the favorite, and everybody said, "Well, is it a underachievement? Is it a disappointment if they don't win the whole thing?" It's like, yeah, they're the favorite.
Yeah,
Tennessee's not the favorite.
They're not
here.
the favorite.
I don't know that you should. I know you will be disappointed. I know fans will be disappointed. I don't know that you should be though. If you're just in the mix, you're saying going in, we need the tumblers to click just the right way.
I'll tell you why for Tennessee, I think it's going to be a disappointment if they don't make it because the schedule lines up so well. Because to a lot of people, they're going to be favored in 9 games at least, maybe 10 if they're favored against Alabama at home. And if you don't, that means if you go 9-3 and miss the playoff, you didn't win any of those swing games basically, or you lost one you weren't supposed to.
Right.
Either way, it's going to be a disappointment. So that's why the schedule. I think
That's
is
the
the reason.
key.
Okay.
Losing one you're not supposed to.
Yeah.
Or how did it happen? Was there something
Right.
that came down to a coaching decision that didn't work out or blew up in their face? That is what can send fans into.
Then you
that.
almost have to define in the mix, right? Are you in the mix when you go to Georgia later in the year, and that's the game you need to win to be able to have a chance to go on? Or are you already kind of on the fringe with 4 or 5 of those other teams that probably aren't going to make it?
Well, you said the games, as long as you don't lose the games you're not supposed to. Which of those? You're supposed to lose to Georgia. You're supposed to lose to Alabama, I suppose. Who else on this list? See, because I look at NC State and Oklahoma.
NC State and
And
Oklahoma.
you've got a first-year quarterback. I'm thinking that could be done. I wish you played those later in the season.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you got them early. I think those could be losses. But I don't know aside from Georgia and Alabama, I don't know how many losses
Right.
Tennessee fans are going to accept.
Because if you
this
have
year.
3 losses,
Yeah.
you're pretty much out. Is that what we're
I think
thinking?
if you
Yeah, I
lose
think
that Oklahoma game, it won't be the end of the world. You won't love it, but it won't be the end of the world.
Not the end of the world, yeah.
NC State,
Yeah.
that
that'd
would
be a
tick
problem.
people off. All right, got to wrap
Florida.
it up.
11-point favorite.
That always. All right, thanks, guys. Thanks to you. As I said off the top of the show, you're the best audience in the world. I appreciate you. Thank you very much. Get out and see our sponsors. Thank them. See you next Sunday.